Your favorite crab meat pizza has arrived, Mom. Enjoy to your heart's content. As my daughter-in-law places the plate before me, her kindness seems out of character. I can't help but question this abrupt shift. It strikes me that my eldest child and his wife might be orchestrating some scheme, using food as their tool. Their history of hostility and past attempts to deceive me weigh heavily on my mind. The lavishness of this pizza only adds to my skepticism. Their sudden display of kindness feels more like a calculated move than genuine warmth. Trusting them blindly would be naive. It's clear they're plotting something. I refuse to be underestimated. I possess the capability to defend myself and reverse any situation if necessary. My name is Mary, a housewife in her 60s. Since my husband's passing years ago, I've lived alone. Initially, when my eldest child and their spouse proposed I move in with them, I declined. They were newlyweds, and I wanted them to relish that special phase. Nevertheless, they insisted on residing nearby out of concern for my well-being, a gesture for which I was genuinely appreciative. Their frequent visits, despite my reassurances that they needn't feel obligated, were a testament to their caring nature. My eldest child would often express worry, prompting me to relent and indulge their concern. Similarly, my daughter-in-law sought opportunities to foster a bond with me even when my eldest was occupied. I took pride in my child's choice of partner, believing her to be a person of integrity. However, I was oblivious to their ulterior motives at the time, a realization that now vexes me. Reflecting on those moments, I am irked by my own gullibility. Genuine kindness without hidden agendas is a rarity. I allowed myself to be swayed by their eloquent assurances, oblivious to the underlying truth. It wasn't until later that I uncovered their true intentions. One evening, they dropped by and ended up staying overnight, citing a lack of plans for the following day. Though I hesitated to encroach on their time as a couple, suggesting they return home since it was nearby, my daughter-in-law was insistent. "We're eager to strengthen our bond, so we'd like to stay," she asserted. Reluctantly, I acquiesced, offering them the guest room. This house, a creation of my late husband, holds many unused rooms since it's too large for just me. Despite its dustiness, my daughter-in-law graciously assisted in tidying up, showcasing her adeptness at housework and reinforcing my favorable opinion of her. In the quiet of night, I stirred, parched, and made my way to the kitchen. En route, I noticed the living room bathed in light. Intrigued, I peered in, finding them seated on the sofa engaged in conversation. Unable to resist the temptation, I surreptitiously listened in, inadvertently overhearing a dialogue between my eldest child and his wife. "I'm utterly drained," remarked the eldest child. "That old lady has us toiling like slaves, don't you agree?" "Just endure a little longer," the wife countered. "Once we secure Mom's inheritance, we're free. If her husband hadn't been a CEO, we wouldn't be in this predicament. It's astounding how easily she's deceived just because we're cordial to her. Mom's always been emotionally fragile. She'll likely bestow the inheritance upon us." I was dumbfounded by what I overheard. If their words held truth, then their kindness was merely a facade to lay claim to my late husband's estate. Had all their previous gestures been insincere? Every word they uttered to me were family bound to support each other, or so I thought. Why this fixation on the inheritance? I couldn't discern any financial troubles on his part, but perhaps he's entangled in dire straits unbeknownst to me. What drives them to such lengths for an inheritance? Is it solely for monetary gain? The behavior of the couple left me pondering, perplexed by their motives. I resolved to confront them about their recent conduct. Through inquiries within the neighborhood and among acquaintances, a startling revelation surfaced. Both of them were deeply entrenched in gambling, having accumulated an overwhelming debt far beyond their means to repay through conventional employment. It dawned on me why they were so desperate for the inheritance. My late husband had bequeathed a substantial portion to our eldest child, albeit less than what I received, yet still a sizable sum. They had recklessly squandered it, plunging into insurmountable debt. Their kindness, it seemed, was merely a guise to secure the inheritance from me. Following this discovery, I grew wary of their intentions. "Do you require any assistance, Mom? We're here to lend a hand," my daughter-in-law inquired, her words ringing hollow in light of the unsettling truth. "Your favorite crab meat pizza is here," my daughter-in-law announced cheerfully as she placed the plate before me. "Mom, eat as much as you want." Her sudden kindness struck me as odd. I couldn't help but question this abrupt change. Suspicions gnawed at me. It seemed my eldest child and his wife were orchestrating something, perhaps using food as a guise. They had a history of hostility and deceptive acts, so their newfound warmth raised red flags. It was clear to me that something wasn't right with this extravagant pizza. Their niceness felt contrived, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were up to something. I refused to be underestimated. Despite being a housewife in my 60s, living alone since my husband's passing, I was not without my own strength. When my husband died, my eldest child and their spouse had offered for me to move in with them. However, I declined, wanting them to cherish their newlywed bliss. Yet they insisted on living nearby out of concern for me, a gesture I initially appreciated. Their frequent visits, despite my reassurances that they needn't feel obligated, only fueled my suspicions. But it wasn't until one fateful night that my doubts were confirmed. They stayed over, claiming they had no plans for the next day. I suggested they return home since it was close by, but my daughter-in-law insisted they stay to deepen our relationship. Reluctantly, I agreed, offering them the guest room. In the dead of night, I caught them conversing in the living room. What I overheard shattered any remaining trust I had in them. They spoke callously about me, about their plans to secure my late husband's inheritance. They had squandered their own fortune on gambling debts, leaving them desperate for money. Their kindness towards me was a ruse, a means to an end. From that moment on, I kept my guard up. When my daughter-in-law extended hollow offers of help, I politely declined, wary of their true intentions. Their subsequent attempt to confront me about a supposed new love interest only reinforced my skepticism. Their concern was a thinly veiled attempt to maintain control over my finances, and I refused to be manipulated any longer. I could see right through her facade. It was clear she was only concerned about protecting her inheritance. Yet my daughter-in-law continued to play the role of the caring daughter-in-law, never revealing her true intentions. That's acceptable for now, I thought. The true nature of my eldest child and their spouse will be revealed in due time. All witness their true selves when the moment is right. And that moment arrived sooner than anticipated. "Happy birthday, Mom," exclaimed my eldest child, presenting me with a bag from a fancy pizza establishment. Inside were an array of pizzas, including my beloved crab meat pizza. "Thank you, but let me handle these," I insisted, prepared to start plating them. "No, Mom, today's your day. Sit back and relax. I'll take care of it," declared my daughter-in-law as she whisked the bag away to the kitchen. My eldest child followed suit, offering assistance. Despite their seemingly genuine efforts to celebrate my birthday, I remained wary. Something was amiss. As I contemplated their motives, they returned with plates in hand. Before me sat a steaming slice of crab meat pizza. "Here's your favorite, Mom. Enjoy," my eldest child affirmed, echoing their spouse's sentiments. To an outsider, it might have seemed like a joyous birthday celebration, but I knew better. There had to be something sinister lurking on that plate. I refused to be fooled. Their excessive kindness raised suspicions that couldn't be ignored. With my husband no longer by my side, I understood the importance of protecting myself. I vowed never to place my trust in them again. They would soon rue the day they attempted to deceive me. "Well, it certainly appears appetizing, but my tastes have evolved recently. I find myself drawn to the foie gras on your plate," I remarked, reaching for my eldest child's dish. They tried to intervene, but I feigned ignorance, questioning, "Is there a problem? You know, I've developed a newfound appreciation for foie gras. And if memory serves, you used to enjoy crab meat too, didn't you?" I suggested we share both dishes, observing the sudden pallor that washed over my eldest child's face. It was evident that they had schemed to manipulate me by tampering with my favorite pizza. Their reluctance to indulge confirmed my suspicions. "But it looks so tantalizing. Won't you have a taste?" I prodded, watching as their facade crumbled under the weight of their deceit. With resolve, I reached for a slice of the crab meat pizza and offered it to my eldest child. Reluctantly, they took a bite, their expression tense as if anticipating the aftermath. Daughter-in-law glanced at them, her concern evident in the pallor of their face. "You seem a bit off color. Perhaps the pizza didn't agree with you, Mom," she suggested, her voice tinged with apprehension. "Considering how your husband is feeling, maybe it's best to call it a night and prepare something different," she added, her panic palpable. Sensing daughter-in-law's desperation to end the meal, I countered, "But your son doesn't appear well either. It's safer for you to stay the night." Despite her attempts to deflect, insisting they leave, her words faltered, betraying her desire to depart. It was clear she was eager to make a swift exit. I always thought that for a couple attempting to deceive others, they're remarkably inept liars. They unravel at the slightest hint of unpredictability. I mused to myself as I observed my eldest child. Suddenly, something peculiar occurred. After a few moments, with a resounding thud, they collapsed to the ground. As I approached, I realized they were deeply asleep, likely drugged with a sleeping pill. Oh, couldn't keep your eyes open, could you? Must have been exhausted, I remarked, tilting my head in feigned innocence. Daughter-in-law's frustration boiled over. Enough. Why won't things go according to plan? Today was supposed to be crucial, she exclaimed, slapping my eldest child's cheek in a futile attempt to rouse them. But they remained unconscious, oblivious to her distress. I stood in stunned silence as daughter-in-law's facade crumbled before my eyes. Disregarding my presence, she began to confess. I'd been pretending to be the dutiful daughter-in-law, all in hopes of securing the inheritance to clear our debts. Today was meant to be the final step. We planned to incapacitate you and steal your banking card. But nothing went as planned. It's your fault, she accused, her glare piercing. Their scheme to drug me and steal my banking card under the guise of a birthday celebration was truly deplorable. I couldn't stoop to their level, so I decided to confront them head-on. I've known all along that your kindness was just a front to get to my money. That's why I kept my distance and declined your offer of pizza, I revealed, watching as daughter-in-law's expression shifted from shock to disbelief. It was clear she had underestimated my awareness of their deceit. How foolish they must feel for thinking they could deceive me so easily. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm not as naive as you both seem to think, I continued, a hint of scorn in my voice. Your sudden displays of kindness always struck me as suspicious, and I even overheard your conversation about the inheritance when I stayed over, discussing your plans in the target's own home. That's just plain foolish. Don't label us as fools. We've been doing our best, daughter-in-law retorted defensively. If this is your best effort, then it's no wonder you're drowning in debt, I countered sharply, watching as daughter-in-law's expression shifted with discomfort at the mention of the word debt. And you know about the debt too. How much do you know? It was evident that daughter-in-law hadn't anticipated my knowledge of their financial woes. Her anxiety was palpable at the mention of their debt. I did some digging and discovered the extent of your gambling debts. It was quite a shock to find out. You've managed to accumulate quite a substantial debt, I stated matter-of-factly, noting the growing pallor of daughter-in-law's face. She must have realized there was no escaping the truth. Mom, I'm truly sorry. Please forgive us. We're struggling to make ends meet. Can you lend us some money? We'll repay you, daughter-in-law pleaded earnestly, her once confident demeanor now replaced with desperation. Even in her distress, she continued to seek financial assistance. It was disheartening to realize that, to her, I was merely seen as a convenient source of support. I'm sorry, but I won't be giving you a single cent. I can't trust individuals like you to fulfill your promises, I responded firmly, refusing to yield to her pleas. You need to take responsibility for your actions. Daughter-in-law's demeanor shifted to one of resignation at my words. Though visibly disheartened, she seemed to comprehend my unwavering stance and refrained from asking for money again. Following that confrontation, my interactions with my eldest son and daughter-in-law gradually waned. They ceased visiting, barely maintaining any communication. Surprisingly, when those days arrived, I didn't experience loneliness as I had expected. Instead, I felt a sense of liberation, free from the shackles of deceit. Eventually, my eldest child and daughter-in-law relocated. According to neighbors, they were escorted away by dubious individuals, likely unable to settle their debts and forced to flee to a distant state. Perhaps they now endure harrowing circumstances, plagued by the consequences of their actions. Yet such matters are no longer my concern. We are estranged, our ties severed. I bid farewell to this tumultuous chapter, confiding in my late husband's photograph. His expression seemed to exude a sense of relief, as if acknowledging the closure of a fraught period. My sole family now resides in the memory of my late husband, the one who steadfastly stood by me. The life is fleeting. I am determined to embrace it with strength, cherishing the cherished moments shared with my husband.
Sil kept making mean comments about my husband because he chose to stay home and take care of our family instead of working. I got really upset and told everyone at her wedding dinner how Jason had supported their whole family during tough times. Let me give you some background. I'm 28 years old and my husband Jason is 29. We met 6 years ago and got married 3 years ago. We have a 1-year-old daughter together. I met Jason through my brother, who is friends with him because of their jobs. Jason used to be a police officer, and my brother owns a pizza place where Jason used to hang out. One year, my brother brought Jason home for Thanksgiving, and that's when we met. After dating for 3 years, Jason proposed, and we got married. I had met most of Jason's family before we got married, and they were usually nice to me, except for my sister-in-law Janice, who is 27. Even though Jason assured me that Janice would warm up to me eventually, she never did. She never openly showed her dislike for me in front of others. Instead, she would make subtle insults and backhanded compliments, passing them off as jokes. At first, it really bothered me, but after a while, I got used to it. I got used to ignoring Syl's mean comments because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. She never said anything rude when my husband Jason was around, probably because she didn't want to upset him. Jason knew about the tension between his sister and me and made sure I wasn't alone with her during family visits. I didn't want Jason to cut off his family because of Syl's behavior, so we just pretended everything was fine. We both tried to ignore Syl's comments, even though it wasn't easy. We didn't really have any other choice. Looking back, I wish I had spoken up instead of staying silent. I was worried about causing trouble or being seen as overly sensitive. But I couldn't stay quiet any longer, especially after what happened recently. Jason used to be a police officer, but he quit his job to be a stay-at-home dad a few months ago. I'm a working mom with a demanding job as a trauma surgeon. My husband and I were struggling to balance our careers with raising our daughter. Both of us had demanding jobs and couldn't spend much time at home. We relied on daycare and our parents to take care of our daughter when needed, but it didn't feel like enough. We felt like we were missing out on important time with her, and we worried she wouldn't have us around much as she grew up. About a year ago, my husband Jason and I had a serious talk about this. He decided to quit his job as a police officer so he could spend more time at home with our daughter. I didn't push him to make that choice, but he felt it was the right thing to do since I earned more money, and he believed it was fair for our daughter to have one of us around most of the time. I asked Jason countless times if he was sure about quitting his job to become a full-time dad. It was a big decision, and I wanted to be sure he wouldn't regret it or feel resentful toward me. But he reassured me that he was happy to take on this role. Even though he loved being a cop, he seemed genuinely content spending his days taking care of our daughter and managing the household. We talked about it recently, and he admitted that it was a bit challenging at first to adjust to being a stay-at-home dad after working for so long. But over time, he found it easier, especially because he could spend quality time with our daughter. He's really happy with how things have turned out. He used to dream of being a cop, but now his biggest dream is being a father, and I think that's pretty amazing. However, Jason's family doesn't see any beauty in our situation. I probably should have expected this, considering they're pretty traditional. While they allow women to work, there's a catch. They don't allow men to work at home. None of the men in Jason's family do household chores because they think it's beneath them. So the women end up doing both their jobs and the household work, or they're pressured to quit their jobs altogether, like my mother-in-law did. What's even crazier is that they don't see anything wrong with this setup. They think it's perfectly fine. Jason and I have talked about this, and we both agree it's a backward way of thinking. But we've never brought it up with his family because they just come up with excuses to justify their beliefs, and we didn't want to get into arguments with them. If they're happy living their lives that way, who are we to judge them? Thankfully, we found a different path for ourselves. Jason and I have always divided our responsibilities equally, and sometimes he even does more household chores if I have to work late. Now, with him staying at home full-time, he's taking care of everything at home while I focus on my job to support us. We believe that as long as we're all happy and healthy, and there's food on the table, it doesn't matter who does what. However, his parents and sister strongly disagree with this. They're upset with Jason for quitting his job and staying home with our daughter. They think it makes him less of a man or something, and they've been arguing with him about it for months. I tried to step in at first, but his parents made it clear that my involvement would only make things worse. Jason didn't want me to defend him either because he didn't want to drag me into the conflict. So I decided to stay out of their way. It took them a while, but eventually they accepted our new arrangement and stopped bringing it up. It probably helped that they had other things to focus on, like Janice getting engaged. Her boyfriend, Harry, proposed after they'd been together for 2 years. Everyone was so caught up in the excitement of the engagement that they pretty much forgot about Jason's situation for a while. We were grateful for the distraction because it meant we didn't have to deal with any arguments from his family about Jason staying home. It seemed like everything had blown over, and we wouldn't have to hear about traditional gender roles again. But then, at Janice's rehearsal dinner yesterday, the topic came up again. So we had a bit of a crisis. Janice's wedding was just a day away, and we needed to figure out how to handle the situation quickly. We needed help urgently, so we posted about it hoping for a fast response. During dinner at the rehearsal dinner, Jason and I were sitting across from Janice and her fiancé Harry. Their parents and a few other family members were there too, and we were all chatting happily. Everything seemed fine, and I was relieved that we were getting along well, especially after the tension from Jason quitting his job. But then Janice suddenly changed the subject and asked me about my work. I felt really uncomfortable, but I had to answer Janice's question about my work because it seemed innocent enough. I just said everything was going well and hoped she'd leave it at that. But then she turned to Jason and made a joke about how he's now living a life of leisure since he's not working and relying on my income. She didn't stop there. She kept making jokes about how he's not in charge anymore and cracked some other mean jokes about him. Jason tried to brush it off and smile, but it was clear he was hurt. I couldn't take it anymore. It was like all the frustration from dealing with Janice and her family's outdated views just boiled over. So I decided to bring up something that nobody wanted to hear. I couldn't hold back anymore, so I told Janice that she could joke all she wanted, but Jason was still a better person than anyone in their family. I pointed out how audacious it was for her to make fun of Jason, considering that without him, she wouldn't have been able to go to college or even meet Harry. Jason had been helping his parents financially since he was 18. It was a dark time for their family when Jason's father lost his job while Jason was still in high school. Janice was too sheltered to notice the struggles in her own family, and her parents and Jason made sure to shield her from it. They never said no to her, even when they were struggling themselves. Jason had to work 2 jobs to support them while his father searched for work. Thankfully, they only had to endure this hardship for about a year. Thanks to Jason's support and some savings, Janice never knew about any of this until I brought it up at the rehearsal dinner. She was shocked, and so was everyone else, because the secret had been kept for almost a decade. Nobody was supposed to talk about it because they didn't want Janice to find out. But after all those years, I finally brought it up, and now she knew exactly how much she owed to her brother. She had no right to make fun of him or put him down. Everyone else might have kept quiet to protect her, especially Jason, but I couldn't stand by silently. After I spoke up, there was just silence at the table. After a moment, Jason and I left, and we walked back to our hotel room without saying a word. Even when we got there, we didn't discuss what had happened at dinner. I knew it would become a big deal, and so did Jason. But his silence told me he didn't think I did anything wrong, so there was no need to talk about it further. The next morning, when I woke up to the sound of knocking on our door, and it was Jason's parents. They wanted to talk to me right away. After they came in and we all sat down, they got straight to the point. They told me that the family wanted me to apologize to Janice. They felt that what I said at dinner was something they had kept from her for a long time, and it wasn't right for me to bring it up. They said it wasn't my place to say those things to her, and it had ruined the atmosphere of the evening. They also mentioned that Janice was just joking around with Jason like siblings often do, and now she was upset and couldn't stop crying, and it was all because of me. I realized I had no justification for getting so defensive and revealing such a big secret, knowing the impact it would have on their family. Janice was feeling incredibly guilty and kept apologizing to her parents, realizing she had been a burden on them without even realizing it. Her parents explained that she was having a total breakdown, which is exactly why they never wanted her to know the truth about their past struggles. They believed she was emotionally fragile and wouldn't be able to handle it, and her reactions seemed to confirm their fears. Now they want me to apologize to Janice and the rest of the family for my outburst and tell her I didn't mean what I said. I have until the end of the day to decide, but they want me to resolve things before her wedding tomorrow. There's a one-day gap between the rehearsal dinner and the wedding, so she has time for her friends to arrive. It's fortunate that I have until the evening to decide what to do. Jason believes I shouldn't apologize because I was just standing up for him, and Janice has always been rude to me, so it's time I stood my ground. I've been leaning towards the same viewpoint. However, with Janice's wedding coming up tomorrow, I don't feel good about potentially causing her to have a breakdown right before her big day. Most of her family members think I owe her an apology, but I know their opinion is biased. Even Jason's opinion might be influenced by our situation. So I've turned to Reddit for a neutral perspective. I brought up how my husband helped his family in the past because Janice kept making fun of him for being a stay-at-home father. Update 1. It's evening now, and I've read the comments. I've decided I don't need to apologize for anything. Jason and I are packing up to leave because it would be awkward if I don't apologize and still go to Janice's wedding tomorrow. We're going to tell his parents we're leaving, because it wouldn't be right to just disappear without saying anything. Jason and I discussed this earlier, and he thinks it's the right thing to do. Janice has always been rude and insensitive, and it's time she faces the consequences. Jason's family has been difficult to deal with since he quit his job. He expected them to support him, but they haven't. They make him feel bad for wanting to spend time with his daughter. We knew that they had old-fashioned views about work and household chores, but we hoped they would change. Since they haven't, it's their fault if we stop talking to them. We're happy with our lives, and if they can't be happy for us, we don't want them around. They've been negative and critical of us for months, and we don't need that kind of energy in our lives. So we stood up for ourselves because we had enough. Jason's parents didn't like it and called us selfish, saying we needed to consider how our actions would affect Janice's wedding. They thought our absence would cause a scene and take the attention away from her. Janice herself showed up after hearing the argument. She said it was okay if we didn't come to the wedding, and actually preferred it that way. But then she accused me of being selfish and trying to ruin her wedding. We ended up arguing, which wasn't great, but it gave us a reason to leave without more drama. They didn't try to stop us, which was a relief. We just want to focus on our own lives now. We might forgive them if they apologize, but that seems unlikely. Right now, we're just happy to be home with our daughter. Jason's playing with her while I write this. Our family feels perfect, no matter what anyone else thinks. Hey everyone, this update is a day after the wedding, which we didn't attend. Apparently, there was a lot of talk about us, mainly from Janice herself. It's funny because her parents were worried our absence would make the day about us. But Janice made it about us anyway. She told distant relatives about our argument, making a big deal out of it. Some people are reaching out to Jason for details, wanting to be part of the drama. We're staying out of it and being vague in our responses. We don't want to stoop to their level and get into more fights. Janice loves drama, and we don't want to give her more. We're ignoring everyone and trying to take the high road, even though they talked about us behind our backs. We just want to move on and leave the drama behind. My mother-in-law said something really hurtful to me while we were at a restaurant. She made it clear she didn't think I belonged there. She even hinted that because I wasn't her blood relative, I didn't matter as much. It made me so mad that I wanted to leave right away. As I got up to go, she stopped me and told me to pay for the meal if I was leaving early. But I wasn't about to pay for someone else's food after being treated like that. I stood my ground and refused. My name is Maya, and I work in an office. My husband Terrell and I are happy together, except for one big problem, his mom. She's always criticizing me and meddling in our lives. Even when I tell Terrell about it, he doesn't see the problem. He thinks she's just being a caring mom, but I know better. As time went on, my mother-in-law's interference in our lives got even worse. She had a key to our house, given to her by my husband, and she just let herself in whenever she pleased. She criticized everything and spread rumors about me to our neighbors. I begged my husband to move us somewhere else, but he didn't seem to care much, too caught up in his work. Then, something changed. He got a big promotion and a raise thanks to a successful project. Seeing this as our chance to make a fresh start, I suggested we start a family. Now that we have more money, maybe it's time to think about having kids, I said, hoping this would make him realize how toxic his mother's behavior was. But he had another idea. He thought if we were going to have children, we should live in a town that's better for them. There aren't many places for kids to go here, like daycare centers or parks. Shouldn't we move somewhere more family-friendly? Finally, he agreed to move, which made me even happier than his promotion did. But that happiness didn't last long. The next day, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced like she always did. I was annoyed, thinking she was going to start criticizing again, but something seemed off this time. I want to celebrate my son's promotion, so I've booked a fancy restaurant. It's really expensive, but it's classy. The food is amazing, and the staff is great. Everyone says good things about it, she told me, inviting me to come along. Sounds nice. Good for you, I said, trying to be polite, even though I was still not happy with her. Well, forget about your schedule. I really want you to come to this restaurant, she insisted. I'll take a look at my schedule, but I'm not sure if I can make it, I said. Don't say that. We really want you there, she insisted, not taking no for an answer. Even though I responded that way, she just smirked and left. It was strange because she had been excluding me before, but now she was inviting me and insisting that she'd wait. Something didn't feel right. When I asked my husband about it later, he said he had already promised his mother that we would go together. She had booked that restaurant specifically for us, and he was excited about it. Don't you feel the same way, Maya? He asked. Sorry, but I'm not excited about it. I'm worried about how much money we'll spend at such an expensive place. I really don't want to go. Just tell them I have something urgent and go enjoy yourself, I replied, feeling uneasy about the situation. Why are you being so negative? Plus, it's not just us going to the restaurant. My brothers are bringing their wives too. It wouldn't look good if you weren't there with the whole family, my husband insisted, excited about going to a fancy restaurant for the first time. Even though I didn't want to go, I felt like I had to. My husband wasn't listening to me anymore. If he trusted my mother-in-law more than me, I decided to secretly record her behavior with a voice recorder I bought online. I had a feeling she would continue her harassment at the celebration. I planned to record it and play it for my husband later. If he still didn't believe me, I was ready to consider divorce. Making that decision made me feel a little better. Still, the day we were supposed to meet my mother-in-law at the restaurant felt really gloomy, and I couldn't stop sighing. I barely knew my husband's brothers, having only met them at the wedding, and I hadn't really talked to their wives beyond saying hello. When we got to the restaurant, the waiter led us to a big room where my mother-in-law, my husband's other brother and his wife, and the third brother and his wife were already sitting. There was one empty seat at the table. My husband looked confused. Did the waiter make a mistake with the seats? He wondered out loud. I'll go ask. Everyone, go ahead and start eating, he said, leaving the room. As soon as he left, my mother-in-law stood up, her face looking mean. There's no seat for you. Why would I invite a stranger who just married my son to a family celebration? She said, sounding really rude. So you have a choice. Prove you really want to be part of this family or leave and never come back. Decide now. I'm leaving, I said right away. My mother-in-law looked surprised for a moment. Did she really think I'd beg her to accept me as family after this? No way. Listen to me carefully. If you foot the entire bill for everyone here, I'll acknowledge you as Terrell's wife. I understand you must be feeling frustrated being treated like an outsider, so pay up and become part of the family, she demanded. I already told you I'm leaving. Why should I cover the expenses for someone else's family gathering? I shot back, turning away from her. My mother-in-law banged her hand on the table and yelled, "Can't you see? I'm offering you a chance to be part of the family. Are you really okay with remaining a stranger? Pay up." No, I'm perfectly fine being seen as a stranger. And since I'm not family, I won't be paying for your meal. Goodbye, mother-in-law, I said firmly, and I walked out. She tried to catch up to me, but by the time she reached the entrance of the room, I was already at the exit of the restaurant. When I got home, planning to email my husband about what happened, he surprisingly returned within just 10 minutes. The waiter confirmed that there was no mistake with the reservation, and my mom was causing a scene, he explained. It seemed like my decision to stand up for myself had inspired the wives of my husband's brothers as well. They had been enduring my mother-in-law's mistreatment silently, but seeing me speak up gave them the courage to do the same. In a bold move, both of them left the restaurant, and our husbands, the eldest and third sons, hurriedly followed them. I was prepared for my mother-in-law's backlash, and sure enough, within 3 hours, the phone started ringing nonstop. It was so disruptive that I eventually blocked her calls. However, one call managed to get through from an unknown number. "Hello, sorry for calling so late. Is this Maya's mobile phone?" The man on the other end introduced himself as a police officer from the nearby police station. He informed me that after everyone left, my mother-in-law tried to eat what she could and then attempted to make me pay the bill. However, the restaurant staff, already unhappy with her behavior earlier, refused her request. They thought I wouldn't come back to pay after leaving upset. Ignoring her calls, my mother-in-law was advised to pay by card. But she didn't have one and didn't bring enough cash to cover everyone's meals. Desperate, she tried reaching out to other family members to help cover the costs, but no one responded. Frustrated and angry, she started yelling and blamed me entirely for the situation. Her anger got worse, and she ended up breaking expensive vases and flower pots in the restaurant. This caused the restaurant to call the police. The officers managed to calm my mother-in-law down, but she refused to admit any fault. The restaurant didn't get paid, and they had a difficult customer on their hands. They asked the police to escort her home. Feeling guilty for ignoring a call from the police, my husband and I reluctantly went back to the restaurant. When we arrived, the police were trying to calm my mother-in-law down. When she saw me, she glared and yelled, "You're useless. This mess happened because you didn't pay the bill. It's only natural to help your mother, isn't it? Pay up now." I was completely shocked when my mother-in-law said something almost threatening, even with the police around. They had already made it clear that if no one took her home, they would either drive her to her in-laws' house in a patrol car or arrest her for leaving without paying. "Please take her away, arrest her, or do whatever you need to do. Just make her take responsibility," I said firmly, my voice firm and determined. My mother-in-law looked shocked at my words. "How could you say something so heartless? I can't believe it. Just pay the bill. It's bad luck to have a family member arrested," she pleaded. "I don't care. I'm not family, and I don't want to be associated with someone who's acting irrationally and causing a disturbance," I replied firmly, trying to leave the restaurant and leave the situation for the police to handle. However, my husband, who had stayed quiet until now, gave me a stern look. "I understand that what happened to Maya was awful, but is it really serious enough to warrant arrest?" he asked, defending his mother. "You're missing the point. She's in trouble with the police because she tried to leave without paying and caused a scene. It has nothing to do with me. Or are you suggesting that I should be responsible for paying for 6 people's meals, even though I didn't eat?" I countered. My husband fell silent, but walked past me towards the police and the restaurant staff. I knew what he was planning to do. Expecting his actions, I called out to him as he walked away. "If you're going to pay for her meal and compensate them, we're getting divorced. Think about that. My husband didn't say anything in response to my words and silently took out his wallet. Feeling hurt and betrayed, I left the restaurant and walked back home along the familiar road. I began packing my essential belongings, getting ready to leave. Just before the day changed, my husband finally returned. Mom's not getting arrested. It seems she was really in the wrong. But the restaurant said they'd forgive her if I compensated them and promised she'd never come back. I didn't have nearly enough money, so I had my brothers come and help. "Oh, I'm so tired," he explained, his voice sounding exhausted. He kept talking about what happened after I left, seeming irritated by my lack of response. Then he noticed my packed bags and approached me. "Hey, what's with these bags?" he asked, looking confused. "I'm getting ready to leave because we're getting divorced. I told you that if you sided with her, we get divorced. You can't say you didn't hear me, neither can you," I replied firmly. My husband looked down at me, his eyes filled with astonishment. Then he lifted his gaze and began to shout, "What's happening? You've been acting so strange today. I understand that Mom did something terrible, but why do we have to get divorced? I've told you I'm being mistreated, asked, and even with evidence and others backing me up, you still choose your almost arrested mother over me. Isn't it weird that I want to divorce someone who acts like that? I've had enough." He kept saying things, but I didn't really listen. I focused on leaving the house and getting ready for the divorce. The next morning, I went straight to get the divorce papers. When I signed and handed them to my husband, he made a scene about not wanting to divorce. But when I mentioned getting a lawyer involved, he reluctantly signed, and I sent the papers off right away. Finally, I was free to be on my own again. Later on, my husband moved out and went to live with his parents. Turns out, he relied on me a lot for housework, so he couldn't manage it alone. The house soon became a mess. Not liking the untidy environment, he ended the apartment lease and went back to his parents' house. In addition, the eldest and third sons experienced similar outcomes. On the day my husband called them to help with the compensation, they each had arguments with their wives. The wives refused to pay for something that was their mother's fault, but the brothers decided to use their savings to assist their mother without consulting their wives. This led to heated arguments and cooled feelings of love, resulting in discussions of divorce. Both brothers ended up returning to their parents' homes and refusing to do any housework. Ultimately, my mother-in-law and her 3 immature sons also moved back to their parents' house. This situation became a source of gossip among the neighbors, who spread rumors that the wives had abandoned all 3 brothers. Mother-in-law dismissed these rumors, defending her sons and blaming their wives for their troubles. Upon hearing the story, my husband nodded smugly, convinced that divorcing them was the right decision. However, my relationship with the neighbors remained good, and they didn't believe the rumors. They knew about my mother-in-law's unpleasant personality and kept their distance, quietly amused by her antics. As time went on, my mother-in-law gained a reputation as a failed parent who couldn't raise her sons properly. Meanwhile, my ex-husbands earned the label of mama's boys in the neighborhood for siding with their mother instead of standing up for their wives. Despite their persistent attempts to contact me, I changed all my contact details and moved to a new house. They couldn't find us, and they spent their days constantly complaining. Since cutting ties with my mother-in-law and the others, my life has become much more enjoyable. Being free from the stress of dealing with her is a huge relief, and making new friends has been wonderful. During the divorce process, I bonded with the ex-wives of my ex-husband's brothers over our shared frustrations with my mother-in-law. Now, we often go out for meals and enjoy shopping together on weekends. I even find myself grateful to my ex-husband for introducing me to such wonderful friends. In 2 days, we're all planning to visit a new cafe. We can finally do what we want, and it feels incredibly liberating. I want to lead my own life without getting caught up in toxic relationships, and I'm genuinely thankful for the friendships I've found. I believe I would still be feeling lonely if it weren't for them. I'm truly grateful, and I hope these friendships last a lifetime. This house is mine now, Mom. You can't come in anymore. Your key won't work, so you might as well throw it away." My daughter laughed when she saw me holding the key. My things were piled up by the door. I didn't understand why my daughter was treating me like this, especially when I was still sad about my husband's death. I felt lost and confused. "My name is Susan, and I'm 60 years old. My husband died recently after being sick for a long time. Many people came to his funeral and shared memories of him. We said goodbye to him with smiles instead of tears, just like he would have wanted. But even with all the support, I still felt very sad. We have a daughter named Emily. She got married and moved far away. And we haven't seen her much lately, even during holidays. She left quickly after briefly coming to her father's funeral. Before Emily got married, she was very close to us. She always said she couldn't stand the idea of living far away from us, even though we encouraged her to live independently after finding a job. She believed that meals tasted better when the family ate together. I usually came home late from work, so we made sure to have meals together on my days off. Maybe Emily said this to cheer up her father, who was getting weaker because of his illness. We were really happy and thankful for Emily's thoughtfulness. Then, Emily suddenly told us she was getting married and quickly got the marriage paperwork done. After that, she left our house in a rush. We were confused by her sudden decision. We only met her partner once and had a brief conversation with them. It seemed like they truly loved each other, and we only wished for Emily's happiness without interfering in their relationship. However, a few months after getting married, Emily stopped talking to us altogether. We worried a lot and kept sending her messages and calling her every day to check if she was okay. But she didn't reply to any of our messages or calls. Finally, when she did answer, she sounded annoyed and told us to stop bothering her. She even joked about only talking to us if we sent her money. During the day, she sounded like she was drunk and slurred her words. My husband heard all of this and just sighed deeply. Emily's behavior seemed to be influenced by her husband, Ole. After that, my husband never brought up Emily again. Some years later, Emily shamelessly asked us for money because she was having financial problems. That was the last time she and her father saw each other. Over the years, my husband and I made many memories together. We traveled and picked up new hobbies whenever he was well enough. Eventually, my husband passed away. When I came back home from his funeral, I was shocked to see movers directed by Emily piling up my belongings outside. She told them to just stack everything in a corner. When she saw me, she said, "Well, Mom, this isn't your home anymore. I've packed up your things. You'll have to find somewhere else to live before it starts raining and everything gets wet." "Emily, why are you doing this? What's going on? Please, tell me what's happening." I was just so confused, not understanding anything. "What's there to explain? You already know, don't you? This house is supposed to go to Emily after me. Don't act like you don't get it." Emily said this, and then a big man stepped out from behind her. It was because of him that Emily changed. His name is Ali, and he's Emily's husband. Meeting him changed Emily completely. We were introduced to him as a regular guy who worked at a company. But later we found out he was involved in shady business stuff. When we learned about this, we couldn't understand how our honest Emily ended up with someone like Ali, and we were really worried. Emily and Ali kept us away from them, but a few years ago, they suddenly came to our house and shamelessly asked my husband for money. It shook me deeply, but my husband stayed calm and mentioned a will that even I didn't know about back then. It clearly said that this house would go to Emily and everything else to me. Now that Dad has passed away, the house belongs to Emily, so outsiders should leave quickly. You have no right to live here. Don't pretend you've forgotten. Ali kicked my things aside and sneered, "But you can't just show up here all of a sudden." Seeing my stuff piled outside, I didn't know what to do. I felt completely lost. Now, Ole, don't be so harsh. Mom shouldn't stay here, but we're still family, right?" Emily said this as she came closer to me while I held onto the key. "Don't be so sad. You'll always be my mom. You can use this key to come to the house anytime. Don't feel too down." Then she took the key from my hand and threw it as far as she could. "What's the matter with you? The key flew through the air and disappeared. I was shocked by Emily's unexpected action. Turning back to her, I said, "I'm sorry about that." Upon closer inspection, I realized that the key was already useless. I forgot we changed the locks earlier. There was no point in you holding onto it, so I threw it away for you. Don't act like I've done something terrible. It's not that big of a deal. Emily and Ole looked at me in disbelief and burst into laughter. Emily's face, now completely different from before she got married, showed that she would do anything for her own benefit. I felt tears starting to form. Then I remembered my husband's gentle smile, as if he was telling me to stay strong. "Emily, I understand what you're trying to say, but you're getting the wrong idea. This isn't the right place to talk. Let's go inside." I urged Emily and Ole to come inside, but they resisted. "We're still moving in, and don't act like you're in charge, telling us where to talk. This isn't your house anymore. You need our permission to come in." Ali snapped back. Faced with Ali's rudeness, I insisted, "We need to discuss this house. It's not yours yet." "I'm just about to explain," Emily interrupted. "I've called someone who can explain it clearly, and he'll be here soon. Let's go inside and have some tea. If you keep refusing, I'll call the police. Don't make me say it again. This house doesn't belong to Emily. If you understand, come inside quickly. If you try anything, I'll be the one calling the police," I said firmly, unsettling them a bit. "Well, it might be the last time we listen to an old woman's nonsense. You're getting old anyway. We'll hear you out this time. But if you talk nonsense, you'll have to pay for wasting our time," Ali threatened, sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed. Emily gave me a similar glare. It seemed like they had threatened people like this before to get what they wanted. This made me feel sad. Soon, the doorbell rang, and I let a man into the living room. He was the lawyer who had been there when my husband shared the details of the will. "You're the lawyer from before, right? What are you trying to say?" "We've seen the will that says this house goes to Emily, and Dad said so." "That's the truth, isn't it?" Ali argued. "As I mentioned earlier, there was a misunderstanding before. The will includes a condition, and if that condition happens, the inheritance changes," the lawyer clarified. "Why are you confusing us with all these complicated terms?" Emily responded in frustration. Seeing their confusion, the lawyer took over to explain. "A conditional bequest with revocation means the will has conditions. In your father's will, the condition was that Susan could stay in the house as long as she's healthy. Emily would only inherit it if Susan couldn't live there anymore due to health issues or passed away. Your father was very clear about this." Ali and Emily looked completely confused. Did he really say that? Even if he did, we wouldn't remember. What's this talk about revocation? Emily shook her head in disbelief. "Okay, then what about those conditions?" Ali asked, sounding a bit shaken but still defiant. "By trying to kick Susan out of the house, you violated the conditions of the will. Because of that, Emily lost her right to inherit the house," the lawyer explained straightforwardly. "Wait, so you're saying I can't inherit just because of that? That's ridiculous." Emily exploded in frustration. "That's the essence of this will. Breaking that condition, whether it's minor or major, leads to revocation," the lawyer explained calmly. "When did we ever break that condition? Can you prove it?" Ali leaned in, clearly trying to intimidate the lawyer. The lawyer cleared his throat. "There was a moving truck outside, arranged by you two, wasn't it? You were trying to move your things in and live here without Susan's consent. Don't act like we did something wrong. We told Mom about it. She just forgot and panicked on her own. That's not our fault," Emily protested. "Such childish excuses don't work in the adult world. Not only did you move in without permission, but you also threw my belongings outside, telling me to leave quickly," the lawyer replied sternly. "I never said that. You're the one lying. I can't believe my own mother would make up such accusations. If you keep this up, I'll sue you. Do you want that? Being sued by your own daughter is the last thing you want, right? So take back what you said," Emily threatened, her voice filled with anger. The lawyer remained composed and pulled out his phone. We can't retract the truth. Multiple witnesses saw and heard you telling Susan to leave. We've even recorded their testimonies. He played a video with statements from movers and neighbors. Everyone's stories match. They'd all say you two told Susan to leave. You could have paid them to say that. How can we trust this? Stop making a fool of us. Ollie accused, but the lawyer ignored him. Instead, he produced a key. Emily, you took the key from Susan and threw it away, which was witnessed by many. I found this key exactly where it was described to be. Changing the locks means Susan can't enter or live here, breaking the condition that she can stay as long as she's healthy. So you violated the terms of the inheritance. Don't spout whatever you want. If I get serious, I can ensure a lawyer like you never works again. Despite Allie's loud threats, the lawyer remained calm and continued. Therefore, this house will never belong to Emily, and you have no right to live here. Now please remove your belongings and return Susan's immediately. If you delay or try to stay, we'll report a breaking and entering crime to the police. You have 2 hours. Begin now. The lawyer clapped his hands sharply and checked the time on his wristwatch. Police, you say? Such nonsense won't intimidate me, Allie blustered, but the lawyer countered. I'm a professional. This is not a lie. Getting in trouble with the police over this would only cause more problems for you. Even Ollie seemed to understand that this wasn't an empty threat. Oh no! Ollie and Emily began sweating profusely and quickly got up to start moving their things. It seemed Ollie was more bark than bite, like a big guy with no courage. I'm sorry. We'll put everything back right away, so please don't call the police, okay? Please? Emily pleaded sweetly with the lawyer and yelled at the movers outside to reload the truck. But they refused, saying there was no such agreement. In the end, Ollie had to rent a car and somehow managed to load their belongings. Just loading isn't enough. You must put everything back the way it was. If Susan's belongings are damaged or dirty, clean them up. Any damage, and we'll report property damage and seek compensation, the lawyer reiterated, pushing Ollie and Emily to restore everything within 2 hours after loading their belongings. After loading their belongings, Emily tearfully asked Ollie, "Now that we've packed up, what do we do?" "How should I know? It's because of your dad's strange will," Emily sharply retorted, blaming Ollie for not paying attention to the will properly. Despite their argument, they drove off, leaving the scene. I thanked the lawyer profusely and returned to my home filled with memories of my husband, feeling relieved. Later, I heard that Ollie and Emily had caused trouble in their previous town and moved to our house, almost like a secret escape. They had targeted me for inheritance money, but now they were gone. Emily, staying with Ollie, seemed destined for a life of repeating mistakes. It pained me, but it was the path Emily chose. If they ever regretted their actions and wanted to live honorably, I'd be willing to help. My husband had mentioned something like this. For now, I'll enjoy my time in our shared house, perhaps even trying skydiving, something my husband had wanted to do. Looking up at the stars in the night sky, I felt my husband encouraging me, and I'd